yeah, so now we have also Juan Alberto here in this conversation, and he's going to ask you also and to remember a little bit on that experience of the Lab 45.
My question is about, have you ever had some kind of experience as this one in Colombia, where it was a very, very innovative, and I think that the ability that you directed this lab with art students, with the community, it was an interesting experience for you, a learning experience too. We have to clean that water. There are some water treatments there. We went for where the river starts, which is now a sanctuary for birds. You've seen how, like, you know, this is water, please do not use this water. We have to protect nature, with all the sign and signals. And of course, there was a truck picking up rocks and stuff like that. So all the signals of prohibited, but you know, it seems like it doesn't matter. And I think in your reflections, your sculpture at the end of Cada Loco con su tema. And I think for the students, that was a challenging experience, and just getting up in the morning and the sunrise and seeing these plants, which are like the frailejón, which are very old plants, and that they produce the water. That was quite of an experience. With all this touring of things, we finally got to the gallery to see how do we build metaphors about our experience.
I'm very excited to see both of you. It was in both of my visits to Colombia, I had such a tremendous, incredible experience working with communities and students. And I think the lab that I was invited to participate, Lab 45, was also a huge jumping point for me, because I graduated from undergrad 2 years before that. I was teaching, I guess, in different. I had educational experience, but this was the first time that I was in charge of creating an artist lab and you know, a master class in a way, and really kind of specifying the things that I was interested in. So I was working with responsive or site-specific installations before, but actually being put in nature, being put in a framework of a community work, of ecological work. Those were all things that I was so intrigued about, and I'm still so grateful for this experience. I think that was almost like a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Hopefully, I hope to be able to do that again.
So tell us a little bit about the experience that you had in the Lab 45, in the Lab 50. I think that lab, I remember that you arrived directly to Urabá, right? To Apartado. We met actually there. So
yeah. I think with when both of my visits to Colombia and I was at awe with nature. I think it was, you know, the biodiversity and just the landscape is phenomenal. And both, you know, the places I've gone to with both of these labs were beyond, you know, my expectations. And I was continually just kind of what would be the word? I couldn't stop just looking and smelling and listening and trying to take it all in. And I think with getting to Urabá was also learning about the dire circumstances that, you know, sometimes the place, you know, being kind of finding the similarities between the migration of birds and migration of people was just, you know.
I remember a lot what you were doing here in the gallery, and it was incredible time. And we also made this piece of paper with the sentences printed on it. We will distributing and disseminating this, and it was incredible.
So I wanted to show you this artwork. It's not my first artwork ever, but it's also a screenshot from my website. But this is 10 years ago. And when you asked me in some questions that you instructed me to find images that I might be suitable, I thought about this artwork and that I've done through when I was in my BFA, so obviously not my first artwork, but this one was, I think, meaningful for me because it was about translation of ideas. And I think the assignment at the time was like to think about something mundane, to create an artwork that is of a mundane activity. And I think, a lot of time when we think about art, feel like it has to be grand or something that is like sublime or subliminal. And I think this was really important for me to kind of think about everyday process as an inspiration for art. And I called it me walking around the house because basically what I did, and you see sometimes of the other, maybe I'll show you later some of the smaller images here. It was, I created a path. I kind of like made a very simple drawing of a map of like my path around the home. I was working from home at the time. And this is why it kind of came back to my mind in the past year because, we were so much at home and locked down and we're not, we're kind of like going around in circles in house, but I realized that there's no circles in the apartment I was living there, but it was just very much of like sharp edges of a path. So I created some sort of a drawing of that path. And then the thing I've done later is kind of trying to figure out how can I like put it out in the world and not just as a, line drawing. So basically I went to all these like deserted places in Tel Aviv and I used nails and threads and I started to kind of create that map on outdoors. So although this is like my life inside, this was kind of like became something I put there in the world. I think when I started making art, my background is in science. I got my bachelor's degree in medical sciences, and I thought I was going to be a doctor or maybe a researcher. And
you are
kind of, well, yeah, I'm a researcher. I thought it would be more of I'm going to be a genetic advisor or something. But I mean, I felt for many years, I thought there is one way of doing research, but I was always frustrated in a way from how, the work. I think research work was always so incredibly interesting for me, and I loved I loved going to university and doing that. I loved the idea of playing, shifting things, taking, speculating. I think that's what I like most about science. And I think that's also something that we find in art is like speculating an idea that is so ridiculous and then trying to kind of like finding ways to make it happen and realize it. So this is not a new art. This is something I made, and I'll maybe share my screen. So this is, I haven't looked at this artwork in a while. I've done it last year. So I think it made me think today when I was riding my bike and thinking about the answers, I thought, you know what, I've always been like really, and when I was a kid, I was really bad at geometry. I was good. I was okay with math and science and whatever going later in life, but I was always finding it hard to quantify, to actually make like geometry work. I mean, that's like Euclidean geometry. Like it was like hard for me to find, to understand it, but I was always able to understand space in a certain way. I was always good with directions. I was always good with like understanding the space around me. And I think that gap of like understanding that it is like the world works in a certain way and there's certain ways to measure, and then kind of like the leap I needed to take in order to think about space in different and kind of find my own vocabulary on my own measurements to understand. That's kind of like what kind of led me to being interested in creating art and maybe noticing and putting like doing field work, doing all those things, but like it was kind of trying to find a creative output to all this like ideas I had in my head. And this work I've done for like a gallery show in New York a little bit over a year ago, and it's it's an object and it has all this like it's like non-possible geometry. It has something to hold it together. It has like crochet, and that also crochet has those like characteristic of like not working in like it doesn't make any sense, but it somehow is put together. And then all this work, some of these objects are, you're able to, like, you can hold this piece, you can look through it. It's basically, I think, one of the first works that I was did in a series. This is not numbered in the same series, but the series is called extraocular objects. And those are objects you can like hold and you can look through and you can play with and you can make sounds with, but they're still an object. They can be laid down on the floor or on the counter or like be suspended in space. So, you know, they also have all these possibilities within them. So I know this is not exactly what you were asking, but that's kind of like where the question took me.
For me, it has a lot of sense. And you were saying at the beginning that you wanted to take or that you actually got a degree on medical science. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of an organism. This is kind of a, you know, it has this connotation that actually works as something that needs all the other parts or other parts of the object to work as an organism. And I think you actually bring this into the whole art practice that you are doing and you are presenting during the labs and during the experiences.
What I feel about, you know, going from doing getting my degree, I wasn't feeling like the work I was doing was right for me. I think I was maybe frustrated with some of the I didn't want to. I've been vegetarian for many years. I've been vegan for like over 10 years, and I think some of my life choices were like I didn't want to do certain things. I didn't want to create. Work in a lab that did research using animals. And I think what I realized is that I could have worked in a different lab at the time when I was going through school, and it would have been something else. You know, it could have been somehow there, like maybe more computer research, and maybe I would find myself in a path of like doing something else completely. I feel, you know, we are the sum of our experiences, right? So we are, the path, I think the creative path would always kind of found its way, but I'm an artist because I think that's, I felt at the time that I needed to express myself differently. And I think coming from, you know, my family, most of my family are like, they were doctors. My grandma was a doctor, a pediatrician, and was a great influence on my life. And I think kind of seeing her was always like, there was a good, you know, there's one way to do things. And then as I kind of carved my own path, I realized that there's other ways to approach this kind of curiosity and you know, sense of adventure and kind of like, and the quest for knowledge, you know, it's still there. I'm still learning all the time, and I think I'm always be a student in a way, or a researcher or scientist.
You're saying that it's a sense of adventure, but it's also a great commitment. I mean, you're taking the commitment to work as an artist. That as you were saying at the beginning, it's not easy. It's not easy to sustain this economically, and somehow it's taking a lot of risks. But it's also a commitment with a practice that we all know, and from what we are doing in the gallery, we know that is part of human life. I mean, we do art because we are human. We understand things beyond numbers and beyond words. We also need symbols. You know, with the poetics and these metaphors that Juan Alberto says. So we need that to understand the complexity of what we are.
Of course. So I would say there's two ways we can do it. I also have some image of installations, but I can also take you, that's why I'm signed up for my phone as well here. So I could take you to a tour. So I think this show that I'm doing now, it's called To See Subcutaneously, which means to see under the skin, basically. And in Hebrew, it sounds like Lirot Tat Orit. It has a nice kind of like tune to it. it's an active, it's a description, but it's also a suggestion of like how to see the works that I've done. And it's, my work is site specific. I create installations, but in light of the last year, as I was saying before, I didn't think site-specific installation is something that I could ever do again, or at least it will take much longer than it did. So I started creating works that I called them installations in absence. And those were works that are generated digitally in the form of autostereograms. This is like a technology that enables you to see, it's an image making technology, computer generated, that allows you to see something simply as an abstract print that has some movement. It looks like optical illusion, and there's all this movement and details in it, but also can be viewed three-dimensionally. And that could happen by resting both of your eyes and looking beyond the surface, and in a way overriding the brain construction of that, and kind of creating an out-of-body experience that exists as long as you look at it. So I created a work in the gallery. In a way, I created an installation of those installations in absence, because I was able to have this really beautiful space, and I'll walk you through it in a second. And the other thing I've done here, because each of these work kind of requires really kind of like long time, maybe to observe and to look and to kind of like rest and almost meditate. I was thinking a lot about meditation, about practice of meditation, and how it asks you in a way to kind of be present and not think about not thinking, and kind of like be one, kind of channel this emptiness and fullness at the same time. And in a way, to see these works, this three-dimensional work, you kind of have to be in that state of mind. But what I did in order to kind of be also generous about this work, because I know it creates sometimes frustration for people who are not able to kind of like, they say, I cannot see it, which is, of course not true. People are still seeing it. I created an audio work that is part of the installation. It sets somehow a tempo and ambience, and it gives instructions and suggests somehow of a nonlinear kind of choreographies in the space, giving you clues and what to notice and how to kind of find the hidden sites that are on site. And the audio work, which I'll share a link with you in a second, it's also in stereo. It's both in Hebrew and in English. So one channel is Hebrew and the other one is English, and you're able to choose. You can listen to it on your phone, and one ear will be English and the other one will be Hebrew. And the text basically is kind of like, you can listen to it as an ambience, as some sort of a sound, but also try to pick up what can you listen, especially if you speak both Hebrew and English. But if you speak only only English, the Hebrew becomes some sort of a sound piece, basically. It's something that kind of helps you move.
One of the things I've done in this within this installation, kind of thinking about the idea of a residency as well, I basically kept my studio in the space of the gallery. That's where we were sitting. In a sec, I'll show you in a bit. And so I thought about my presence here is almost part of the installation. So I'll switch my camera. Let's do this. Okay. So basically, when you walk into the gallery, there's two pieces that are kind of welcomes you. This is the QR for the sound piece, so you're able to like scan it. You can probably do it, like if you hold your phone out, you can probably do it. And this one kind of just leads you to the sound. So I invite the visitors to put their headphones on and to like let that sound take them around the space. Oh yeah, cool. And so this installation here, it's called the wallpaper, and it is a wallpaper, and it has this kind of like almost kind of intrinsic movement into it, but all of it has you're able to see all these parts inside. There are three-dimensional as well.
What is it made of? I mean, what's the image that you take as a
that I use? So basically, what I have done with all this artwork, basically each work in the show, and this is kind of like an installation view here, has a different interpretation of what an autostereogram, like I use the autostereogram to kind of like try to figure out its limits and how much I can like play with its size and its like pixelation and still kind of keep its three-dimensionality, both in, you know, in its kind of like very clear two-dimensional form, like what kind of movement is still generated if you only see it as a two-dimensional work, but then trying to think how deep how much I can play with the depth and with the composition of it. So in the work here this is like the wallpaper, what I've done, I've used collages, reproductions I've made of, this is the only work that is based on basically on a work that is not completely mine in a way. I've used reproductions of works by artist Hilma af Klint and Hieronymus Bosch, two artists that were, you know, they're 400 years apart, living hundreds of years apart, hundreds of kilometers apart. But somehow I found that both of their work kind of feel very much out of their time and out of place and out of any system. They're like almost time traveling. And what I realized when I start looking at them very much together, that they have a lot of things in common. So I started creating digital collage, like not digital, actual like cut and paste collages of these reproductions, and created small collages of their work. And I found they resonate really well together. So basically in this artwork right here, what I've done is I took those like 3 of these collages and ran them through this like generator. And so they are in a way here in the back, you know, all those shapes that both of them created is kind of like are layered within this complex abstract. This is the wallpaper, but all the other works basically in this space are based on artwork that I've made in the past year. Beyond the digital compositions here, in each of them, there's a digital collage made with images of sculptures and drawings and painting, all of my work that is basically stuck in New York, and I have no access to it at the moment. It's all packed in a storage unit. So I created, basically, I tried to see how will this work look being translated to another language. And I've used with different forms of reading, you know, there's like reflection. I use, an image and I reflect it and I double it and I see it looks different, and if it's mirrored, if it's repeated. Those are all things that I'm interested in. So I created, basically there's like the red, yellow, and blue. Those are work that are printed digitally. And then you have the circular object here that's on the floor that is part of the, basically it has a lot of different, there's a lot of different ways to read these works. And I was kind of building on the idea that it would be somehow probably confounding to some people, and it would be hard for people, some of them, to let go of the usual way of looking and try to see this work in 3D. So the sound piece and even my presence here is in a way as somewhat, I feel like, as an instructor or as a mediator, as a measurement person. I'm doing all this work, kind of like field work, as I'm spending time in this space, also creating drawings. And this is just to kind of wrap it up. Basically, when you walk into the gallery, the two ends of it is like my studio space. So this is like the indoor studio space. That's where we were sitting before. And I've created like this little part where I have the drawings that I've been working on for the last year. Some of them are incorporated in the digital work, and that's either the tone or the colors or some of the shapes. But in a way, they are built in the same way. There's a lot of layering and a lot of kind of like ways of looking at them and seeing them, you know, trying to kind of see what comes up first. Can you see in depth? Can you see the surface? And yeah, so that's like the work I've been working on at the gallery or at the studio. Those are some of the collages I told about like so it has both Helma and Bosch, which again, they were not living, you know, this is like 16th century and 19th century or early 20th century.
It's a wonderful gallery space, and you have actually take a good advantage of the space. And yeah, I remember those images that they were coming in the Sunday's newspapers. Like you were trying to see giraffes and yeah, mostly animals and dolphins, as you were saying. It's very interesting, and the thing is that you're extending the time we spend in front of the image, which is basically one of the issues that we have now. We have now Instagram and Pinterest, and we go through tons of images in 1 second. So this is good that we are consuming. And this visit and this talk, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
And also thank you, Noa, for helping us with that sentence of I am human and nothing human is strange to me, or something of that kind, that or bringing us our humanness again. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me to do this.